We're almost done with the week. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop here with the Center Square. And be sure to wake up each morning with us live as we go to tape. And also get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com. At the top, you'll see newsletters. If you sign up for that, you can pick what the top headlines are from Illinois to get into your inbox. And plenty for us to tackle. That's why we do Illinois in Focus here with the Center Square. So get the newsletter in your inbox. Sign up for that at thecentersquare.com. If you can't make the live show, hey, we got it on podcast as well. So just look for Illinois in Focus anywhere you get podcasts. But I would encourage you to get into the live chat here on YouTube. Pretty lively crowd and always active in the morning. So appreciate them being part of it and sharing their thoughts and communicating with each other there. But also keep in mind, you can find me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air, and you'll be able to find it. So it's on X, Facebook, Instagram. I would say the X page is probably where you'll find most of the close to real-time things, if not real-time, depending on the circumstance and situation that at least I've got myself and my team at the Center Square focused on here in Illinois. So tons to tackle today. We've got a gun violence prevention committee hearing yesterday where they actually advanced one measure and had subject matter on another. So we'll hear about that from the State House here in Illinois. We've also got inside the House chamber, legislators at each other's throats erupting after President Donald Trump delivered a speech in front of a joint session of Congress on Tuesday. So we'll get to that as well. But obviously in Washington, D.C., all eyes were on what was going on with several mayors from sanctuary jurisdictions fielding questions from Congress people. So we'll tackle that up here with Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Get the headlines at thecentersquare.com. And again, join the live chat with us here live each and every weekday morning, 8 o'clock Central, with the Center Square on YouTube.
Okay, do you believe it's acceptable for illegals who commit heinous crimes be released back into the public instead of being detained and deported? Mayor Adams, yes or no?
Anyone break a crime?
Yes or no? This is not hard. Yes or no?
Anyone that break a crime should be detained.
Okay, Mayor, yes or no?
They should be deported.
Okay, Mayor.
Any individual that
Yes or
causes
no?
harm
Yes or no?
and breaks
Okay,
the law
Mayor Wu?
should be held accountable.
This is why you have 6% approval rating, because you suck at answering questions.
It's Nancy Mace questioning some of the mayors yesterday during a U.S. House Oversight Committee hearing on sanctuary jurisdictions. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. There you heard some of the questions from Nancy Mace, including to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who was there testifying yesterday. It's Illinois in Focus. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, but wake up with us each and every weekday morning live for the live program. I'm Greg Bishop, and let's get into it with James Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, laying out why he thinks this hearing is important and what he hopes to get out of it.
These reckless sanctuary policies also force federal immigration officers to go into local communities to apprehend criminal illegal aliens. If sanctuary cities were to simply communicate and work with federal immigration authorities, then federal agents could arrest criminal illegal aliens in a secure environment like a state or local jail. Instead, they have to risk their own safety and public safety by having to go into uncertain, dangerous circumstances just to make arrests. Sanctuary cities make us all less safe and are a public safety nightmare.
Keep in mind, the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois face a federal lawsuit from the U.S. Department of Justice over the sanctuary policies, including the Trust Act and the Way Forward Act, two separate Illinois laws that essentially say that local and state law enforcement can't cooperate with immigration enforcement for criminal detention orders, or for civil detention orders. They can work for criminal detention orders, but not for civil detention orders, just to make sure that that's clear. And then you have the Way Forward Act, which took that further and said that police can't ask about somebody's immigration status or report the immigration status to federal enforcement officials. So those are the jurisdictional sanctuary policies that are being challenged in federal court. And we'll get some response to the latest that we talked about yesterday with the Pritzker administration filing a motion to dismiss that challenge out of federal court. But let's get back to the hearing yesterday with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson joining mayors from Boston, Denver, and New York. But Johnson, in his opening statements, defended what he said was Chicago being a welcoming city.
We still have a long way to go, but sensationalizing tragedy in the name of political expediency is not governing, it's grandstanding. Every violent crime is devastating, but scapegoating entire communities is not only misleading, it is unjust, and it is beneath us. So let me be clear. Chicago's welcoming city ordinance and our other laws and policies do not lead to more crime. They do not prevent cooperation with federal law enforcement on criminal matters. And we do not harbor criminals. We arrest them.
So Johnson, again, saying that the city does not harbor criminals. They arrest them. That goes to the issue of the difference between a civil detention order for an immigration violation versus a criminal detention order for an immigration violation. And you can see where that line is. And how this is going to play out in the courts, I guess we'll watch, but obviously a lot of politics in the House committee with Nancy Mace trying to get yes or no questions answered and had a little spat with Brandon Johnson, as we saw earlier.
Okay, do you believe it's acceptable for illegals who commit heinous crimes be released back into the public instead of being detained and deported? Mayor Adams, yes or no?
New York City.
Anyone break a crime?
Yes or no? This is not hard. Yes or no?
Anyone that break a crime should be detained.
Okay, Mayor. Yes or no?
Mike Johnston.
They should be deported.
Denver.
Okay, Mayor.
Any individual that
Yes or
causes
no?
harm
Yes or
and
no?
breaks
Okay,
the
Mayor
law
Wu?
should be held accountable.
This is why you have 6% approval rating, because you suck at answering questions.
So a lot of the other questions coming towards Johnson were about the welcoming city ordinance that he says has been around for 40 years, and he talks about Chicago's formation and goes into a long history of making sure that people are safe in their communities and that they feel comfortable reporting to police if they're victims of crime. One of the rationale for having the welcoming city and the sanctuary state was that migrants are victims of crime and they need to be able to go to law enforcement and report a crime, but they may be fearful that they'll be asked about their immigration status. Here's Johnson defending the city's ordinance.
Okay, do you believe it's
And let's go to this clip over here. That's what it's like being your own producer for a show.
The type of coordination that happens between our local law enforcement and our communities is paramount to building trust and keeping our communities safe. The ordinance, as well as the state law, the Illinois Trust Act, which was passed with bipartisan support and signed by the Republican governor, Bruce Rauner, we do not permit our local law enforcement from engaging in any federal matters. With a criminal warrant, our city and our state will cooperate with the federal government, but without a criminal warrant, our local law enforcement focuses in on local issues to keep the people of Chicago safe.
So again, that's the rationale that Johnson has for defending his city's sanctuary status. Byron Donaldson, Florida congressman, also apparently getting the support from Donald Trump to run for Florida governor. He had some direct questions about the taxpayer cost of all of this, which has not been cheap.
Mayor Johnson, Chicago. How much has the city of Chicago spent on illegal immigration?
If you're referring to the 2022 up to 2024 of the buses coming from Texas, roughly the same percentage of the state of Texas, about 1% of our overall budget.
What is that? Because I don't have the city's budget in front of me. Numbers.
It's 1%, and if you want the actual calculation, we can make sure someone.
You're the mayor. You don't have the math in front of you?
It's 1% of the overall budget over the last 4 years.
That's why you're a failing mayor.
Which is
Mayor
the same
Adams,
number that
how
was
much did
sent
the city
from
of
us
New
from
York
the
actually
state
spend
of
on
Texas.
illegal immigration? Mayor Johnson, I already asked you. You don't have a hard number, and if you don't have a hard number, you're not running your city well.
Wasn't the only accusation that Johnson wasn't running the city well. There were plenty of other accusations, including from Peoria Congressman Darren LaHood in the House Oversight Committee, asking Johnson questions about crime, but also pointing towards Johnson's approval rating.
Okay, and you look at the level of violent criminals, sexual offenses, and drug dealers.
All violent crime is down in Chicago. In fact, just this year alone, Congressman, respectfully, there's a 20% decrease in violent crime in the city of Chicago.
I don't agree with your statistics.
Well, it's not a matter of whether or not you agree with it. It's a matter of whether it's a
Let me reclaim my
fact.
time, because I thought you might do this. And when I hear your answer, no one in this room should be surprised that your approval rating is 6.6%. Now, that's not just me saying this. Newsweek article, the least popular politician in America is Brandon Johnson. So, recent poll, M3 Strategies conducted this February 20th to 21st, showed that Mayor Johnson has a 6.6% approval rating, the worst showing of any political figure in the country's history.
We've invested $1.25 billion for housing and economic development, particularly for Black Chicago. It's the largest investment in the history of Chicago. 45% increase in youth employment, particularly for Black and brown children. I will not apologize for my investments in the people of Chicago.
So the mayor, again, defending his sanctuary policies there. This is all happening as, again, the U.S. Department of Justice has a lawsuit against the state of Illinois, the county of Cook, and the city of Chicago over sanctuary policies. They're looking to overturn things like the Trust Act and the Way Forward Act. And you've got the city's Welcoming City Ordinance that's a target of this litigation as well. Yesterday, we reviewed the filings in court of the Pritzker administration, the Attorney General, Cook County, and City of Chicago, their court filings to dismiss that challenge from the Department of Justice. If you missed that video, be sure to go check that out. But let's just look again really quick here at the actual filing for that motion to dismiss. State of Illinois and Governor Pritzker's rule motion to dismiss. They say that the government filed this lawsuit, 3 challenges, 3 complaints. They say all the claims asserted against the state of Illinois fail as a matter of law and should be dismissed with prejudice. Count 1 should be dismissed because no federal law preempts the Trust Act or Way Forward Act. Both of these Illinois statutes effectuate Illinois' sovereign choice to opt out of using state and local law enforcement resources to assist with federal civil immigration enforcement. They then use the 10th Amendment as an argument and go even further to say that the governor, anyways, is the wrong person to sue for this because it's actually the Attorney General that implements and enforces this. So we'll see how this goes in court. But I got State Senator Chapin Rose, Republican from Mahomet, to respond. And I just gave him a quick overview of this motion to dismiss and what it means. And here's what he had to say in reaction.
Greg, imagine what would happen if, our state helped, okay? 81% of the American public wants these illegals out of the country. And yet, here comes, Kwame Rule and J.B. Pritzker, who are doing the exact opposite of what the American people are demanding, okay? This very morning, I sat in a committee in this building where the Supreme Court's asking for another $750,000 of the state taxpayers' money just to fund interpreters in court, okay? Again, why are we putting up a homing beacon with free health care, free food, free lodging, free everything to come to Illinois when 81% of the American public wants these folks gone, okay? I don't get it. I mean, who do these people think they're serving? I mean, the people have spoken. The people have spoken loudly. They're done with this. And yet here comes J.B. Pritzker and Kwame Rule once again defending illegal aliens, and they're not even taking care of the people who are already here, the citizens of Illinois. I mean, it's just confounding. Maybe these guys should start helping and get out of the way. I mean, either help or get out of the way. But this kind of dilatory nonsense, I don't get it. I mean, I just hope Tom Homan and the rest of them get in here as fast as they can.
So Rose went on to discuss the safety implications of this particular delay of, the state not helping federal law enforcement enforce immigration law.
Again, how completely ridiculous as it is, to say that we have someone in custody in a county jail in Illinois who is an illegal alien, and the county sheriff isn't allowed to tell ICE to come pick them up. That's insane. Instead, they're going to be let go back onto the streets of everybody watching this right now to make those streets less safe, to commit more crimes in Illinois, because J.B. Pritzker and Kwame Rule didn't get the memo that 81% of the American public wants these people gone. They want them gone yesterday. So either lead and help President Trump or get out of the way. But stop this dilatory nonsense where all you're doing is delaying, and putting the people of Illinois at serious risk and harm.
Again, that delay tactic, Rose says, is problematic. Again, when you have the state telling local law enforcement to not cooperate with federal immigration enforcement.
That's what this is all about. I mean, you know these guys, they're dug in. They think they've got some moral superiority about it. And the reality is 81% of the American people want to go a different direction. They were clear on that point, okay? Stop. Get out. Just get out of the way. Do nothing. Back down. Let ICE, again, under the federal constitution, immigration is a federal purview, okay? Let them do their jobs. And whatever you do, stop telling our local sheriffs that they're not allowed to talk to ICE. We've already got the person detained in jail and they can just hand them off safely. Why would you put that bad guy or bad gal back on our streets to hurt someone else?
So this is really going to be in the courts, right? It's all going to come out as far as the arguments back and forth and what the district court's going to decide to do. Either they agree that it needs to be dismissed, or they agree that it needs to be debated, or they move forward and say, yeah, we're going to dismiss, and then it goes to the appeals courts, and then from there, does it go to the U.S. Supreme Court? So I think this is going to be a long, protracted battle, but ultimately, one of the arguments is that the state says they're not required or mandated to use state and local resources to assist federal immigration officials. Rose responding to that argument.
They have an obligation with an ICE detainer, okay? An ICE detainer, by the very word detainer, means hold. Hold that person until ICE can get to your jail and pick them up, okay? That is a federal obligation. It is a federal requirement on our law enforcement to not do it. But it defies logic. It defies common sense that these guys would be arguing the opposite. If you've already got a bad guy in custody, then hand him over. Why would you let him back on the streets of Illinois to terrorize somebody else?
Anything else, Ryan?
No, thanks,
so there
man.
you go. That's State Senator Chapin Rose. Conversation I had with him at the Capitol yesterday, briefly, just about the reaction to the Department of Justice's lawsuits against the state of Illinois and the state of Illinois wanting to dismiss that. A lot more to come on that story, no question. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Get the podcast where you get podcasts and get the newsletter in your inbox each and every weekday morning with Illinois in Focus Daily.
Concerned about tariffs, if you want to end tariffs, how about we start building things in Illinois? How about we start building things in America? All right? That's what that's all about. But we can't build anything in Illinois. We can't build anything in Illinois because you guys have destroyed our economy with your massive regulations, with your massive taxes on everybody, on businesses, and on families, and everything else.
State Representative Blaine Wilhauer yesterday on the House floor after hearing from Democrats following President Donald Trump's speech Tuesday to a joint session of Congress. And the politics definitely heated up. Good morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Let's get into it because, yesterday on the House floor, they have these moments of personal privilege where a legislator stands up and they either welcome somebody from their, jurisdiction, from their district, and they applaud them. They have other points of personal privilege as well. And it's a moment where they can kind of, share with what's on their mind, including doing just getting up and making a speech. So we'll hear some of that. But yesterday in the White House press briefing, the White House press secretary, she talked about why there's still tariffs on Mexico and Canada and the flow of fentanyl, and how they're really trying to get after ending that flow of fentanyl.
Because Canada is allowing that fentanyl to come to the United States. The president sees these numbers. He thinks about the lives that are lost. And everybody in this room, I'm sure, everybody watching at home, everybody across the country knows someone in our lives who has been killed at the hands of this deadly poison. There needs to be repercussions for that. The president feels very strongly about it.
So again, the question of the tariffs still being in place. There's been talk about lifting tariffs from auto manufacturers or delaying that. There's upcoming reciprocal tariffs that the president's going to do starting April 2nd. So if one product is taxed by Japan at this level, then the U.S. is going to tax that same product coming into the U.S. from Japan at the same tariff rate. So we'll see how all that goes. But Democrats are using this as, of course, something to bludgeon the president with, and also bludgeon Republicans with politically, where they're going to be talking about tariffs or taxes on the working people, on businesses, and so on. But Katie Stewart, a Democrat from Edwardsville in the Illinois State House on the House floor, talking about the president's speech and saying that his plans for tariffs are going to hurt working class families trying to save money.
If just 2 of those Republican congresspeople decided to actually do their job, if they decided to make Congress work as a co-equal branch of government again, we could actually stop the things that are crashing our markets. We could stop raising prices on families, and we could stop erasing retirement savings before they happen. And the best part is, I'm just asking you to hold Donald Trump to the same standards you've held every other president to. It only requires you to apply the same logic today that you cited during his first term. The words and actions of the president matter. They have real consequences for our families, and we need to speak honestly about what the Trump agenda is actually doing instead of fantasizing about what we wish it were accomplishing. This isn't 12-dimensional chess. This isn't playing hardball with trading partners. This is playing with working people who put their trust in the markets and try to build a safe and secure retirement.
I mean, listen, there's no question, Trump even acknowledged this in his speech Tuesday, that there's going to be a bumpy road ahead. And we got to get through that. But he says that it'll be much better on the other side. Same thing happened, in his first term, 2019. He was able to get that deal with China. The farmers took a hit, but then they started seeing some profits. And then all of a sudden COVID hits, and we all know what happened from there. But State Representative Blaine Wilhauer, a Republican from Beecher City, after hearing some of the statements from Democrats, got up and, unleashed.
We're not concerned about President Trump one bit. In fact, we're proud of President Trump, and we're glad that he got elected to save this state and this country from the radical left path that it was on that was destroying our country. We're proud of President Trump because we've lived through it. We've lived through before the China virus, when President Trump brought out record employment in this country, rising wages for everybody, and especially for those in the minority communities, lower taxes for everybody, energy dominance around the world, lower utility bills, no endless stupid wars that defy American interest. That's a record of success. That's a record that we're proud of and we'll stand by every day. And for you over there on the left, if you're concerned about tariffs, if you want to end tariffs, how about we start building things in Illinois? How about we start building things in America? All right? That's what that's all about. But we can't build anything in Illinois. We can't build anything in Illinois because you guys have destroyed our economy with your massive regulations, with your massive taxes on everybody, on businesses and on families and everything else.
And he went on to talk about how Democrats failed to also work to eliminate the death tax for family farmers, because too often they have to pay exorbitant percentage of the estate and got to get lawyers involved too, and that ain't cheap. And they ultimately end up having to sell some of the land just to pay the taxes when, the farm owner passes away and wills the property to somebody else. So that was an effort. It was kind of bipartisan, but it never advanced last year. Will it come up again? I don't know. But on the federal level, the White House press secretary saying that the Trump administration's agenda is working to lower taxes across the board.
With that said, as the president said last night, his administration is wholeheartedly committed, of course, to ending the inflation nightmare caused by the Biden administration. Look at the deregulation efforts. Look at the president's push last night in his speech for Congress to pass tax cuts, to end taxes on Social Security and overtime pay for hardworking Americans, end taxes on tips. We need Congress to get that done because that's going to put more money back into the pockets of the American people.
And what I think he said something else about like no tax on interest for car payments or something to that effect, only if the cars are made in the U.S. So we'll see what kind of agenda the Trump administration is actually getting across the finish line. But regardless, that's not the only thing that they debated. Economics and tariffs and taxation and regulations on the House floor. They also there was some reaction to the president's comments about gender ideology.
Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding.
So, of course, the president getting some applause there, but the following day on the House floor, Democratic State Representative Kelly Cassidy from Chicago stood up and made her voice heard and said that people shouldn't be targeting kids who may have gender dysphoria.
These are our children we're talking about. You are making targets out of kids. You are driving children to suicide by focusing on a boogeyman that does not exist. There has never been any indication of danger to children who compete together. There has never been any of the mysterious bathroom attacks you talk about. I also find it fascinating that you focus on trans girls and women without contemplating that you are, by doing so, sending people that look like adult males, because they are, into the women's room. The hypocrisy is stunning. Quit picking on kids and pick on your own size. I once again volunteer as tribute. Leave the kids alone.
So Cassidy saying that there's, no stories of men and women's sports causing harm to others, or boys and girls sports. But again, back to what the president said in that little chunk of the speech on Tuesday. We only heard just a little part about no federal funds for teams that have men on women's sports. But the setup there was that one of the guests in the White House was a woman who had her whole life rocked by a man in a volleyball game. Spiking a volleyball.
Peyton McNabb was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding.
So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, the fight over federal funding, it's going to be an interesting one that plays out. It's already playing out in courts on a variety of fronts. But back to the State House, after Kelly Cassidy made her comments about, leave the kids alone and saying that the criticism of trans youth is leading them to suicide. State Representative Bill Howder, a Republican from Morton, also a medical doctor, he got up and shared what he saw as some recent research that kind of says the opposite.
The Journal of Sexual Medicine released groundbreaking and a massive study on gender-affirming care. I will read from it. Gender-affirming surgery, this is their findings. There was over 100,000 patients in this study. Gender-affirming surgery is associated with an increased risk of mental health issues, underscoring the need for ongoing research. Their findings showed, their analysis revealed a significant elevated risk of mental health disorders, including depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation and substance use post-surgery among individuals with prior diagnosis of gender dysphoria. In light of these findings, I call on Illinois medicine to cease gender-affirming surgeries as experimental, and the momentum of the evidence is clear. These surgeries increase the risk of mental health disorders in our children. These are facts and evidence, not canards and not feelings. Please stop these harmful surgeries in Illinois medicine.
Again, some of the House floor debate on gender ideology, and Representative Kelly Cassidy then got back up and said that other studies show that youth who get certain types of procedures or certain types of medical treatments for gender dysphoria end up with a lower rate of suicidal ideation. It's a tough conversation to have, no question, but still, it's where our politics are. So again, that's what happened yesterday in response to the Trump speech in Congress Tuesday with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily.
There's a number of things that I'm willing to have conversations about and figure out, but I think that it's just something coming to this committee is perceived as anti-gun, and I've never filed an anti-gun piece of legislation in my life.
State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer at the Illinois House Gun Violence Prevention Committee, and here we are with Illinois in Focus Daily. So a new committee started. We've talked about it several times already because they've had several meetings, but it's, of course, a new General Assembly this year, and that means you've got the new creation of certain committees, one being the Illinois House Committee on Gun Violence Prevention. So what they're doing is they've been hearing substantive issues on bills about, prohibiting somebody with a misdemeanor conviction of stalking in another state from being able to get a FOID card in Illinois. They've talked about, a variety of other measures, and there's bills in committee that we haven't heard yet about safe storage. You've got another measure that would increase the firearm transfer fee to help fund police to go and confiscate expired or revoked FOID cards and firearms that may be associated with those FOID cards, firearm owner ID cards. So we've already heard a lot, right? Well, yesterday they actually met and they took action on a bill that we already touched on as well about the E-Trace program. This is essentially a program the federal government has to help law enforcement track certain firearms that may be used in crimes or that may be stolen and such. So they wanted to increase the ability of law enforcement to have those communications. Here's Curtis Tarver, Democrat from Chicago, who talked about how he's amending the bill and hopes to get it passed onto the House floor.
I'm sure you've had a chance to review this amendment. It's not very long. It just clarifies a couple of things that we discussed last time. One is gender neutral language. Another is just ensuring that IDNR is not looped into being tasked to essentially verify firearms in state parks. Based on what we discussed before, this is more of a law enforcement data sharing bill than it is an IDNR gotcha bill. So we've had some pretty robust discussion about it. I do want to say for the record, I've had a chance to have some conversations again and just want to reiterate, this is not a bill about impinging on the Second Amendment at all. This is a data sharing bill. I'm happy to have that conversation on the floor to make sure it's in the legislative record.
So the legislative record is very important because a lot of times if a law is challenged in court, then the courts will go and look at transcripts of committees and even of House floor debate to look at what the legislative intent is to make that clear. So this measure passed, and it was the first measure to pass out of the Gun Violence Prevention Committee. And here is Maura Hirschauer, the committee chair, celebrating that.
On a vote of 9 in favor and 4 opposed, House Bill 1373 is declared passed and will be favorably reported to the House floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Okay, that was exciting. Our first bill out of committee. Good job, everyone. Yay!
So the Gun Violence Prevention Committee getting their first bill out of committee. We'll hear that on the House floor clearly, but they've got a whole bunch of other bills they're going to be possibly passing out of committee. But yesterday they had a subject matter hearing also on a Republican measure. C.D. Davidsmeyer, hearing a lot from him lately, but of course he's pretty active in the General Assembly as a Republican from Murrayville. But he had a measure that he said stems from a story of a kid who is being bullied. And after school, the bully followed the kid and said, "I'm going to get a gun and shoot you." And apparently it was observed by a librarian at the school, and they didn't report that to the principal until the next morning. And the bill that Davidsmeyer says is kind of like a mandatory reporting type thing. If somebody in a school setting hears that type of bullying, then there needs to be some follow-up immediately with messages directly to the principal and also to the parents of these kids who are in the middle of a spat where somebody may threaten somebody else with a firearm, even just saying, "I'm going to go get my gun from home and shoot you." So Davidsmeyer again sets up why he thinks it's important to have some kind of communication thereafter immediately to stem off any bad outcomes.
The idea behind this bill, and I'm not married to the idea of this bill, but it was just a quick thought process. What can we do to prevent this on the front end, right? So if something like that happens, number one, I think we can all agree that the teacher needs to immediately report it up the line, right, to the principal. Once that happens, the parents must be notified on both sides. And then, my thought was, and this is the area where I don't know that we need to be specific, but do we bring in law enforcement at this time and say, all right, we're going to contact the parents of the kid who made the threat and ensure that that child does not have access to a firearm, right? And that could be as simple as, a phone call to the parent and saying, is it available? Could this have happened? I don't want to take any threats lightly. And I think I would hope that all legal gun owners would be in the same boat and say, you know what, if this happens, if we can make sure these horrible incidents no longer happen, our gun rights will not be under attack.
Yeah, it's an interesting proposal there. You would think it would be kind of common sense, but I mean, what was it down in Georgia? It was a recent school shooting, and I'm just now remembering this. Some guy takes a gun to school and shoots up the school. A couple of people were killed. It wasn't that long ago, like 6 or 7 months ago. And they actually did have the parents notified beforehand that there were, questions of like red flags and this child having access to guns. And they even went to the house. If you recall, it was either Georgia or Tennessee. I'm pretty sure it was Georgia. Regardless, that didn't necessarily stop what happened from happening, right? So, I mean, even with something like this in place, you're still probably going to have things like that. But what about getting police involved? Davidsmeyer says, it's worth a conversation and what kind of level of involvement they would have.
The only thing that I could see as being possibly viewed in that way would be getting law enforcement involved and going to somebody's house and making sure. I wasn't saying law enforcement physically has to go into somebody's house and make sure that their gun is properly stored. They have to have that conversation. Right? So having a conversation is not a bad thing, and maybe law enforcement doesn't necessarily have to be involved. But I just want to make sure that there is follow-up with the parents in that direction. I mean, I understand. I have concerns about the laws that say no cell phones in schools.
And he
Because
goes on from there to talk about how he's willing to have more conversations about the level of communication. In the live chat, Warsaw says it was Georgia. I think he remembers that story as well. But then Jeremy says, secure our schools like you do banks and protection like these politicians have. So maybe that's something else. I don't know. If you do get a report of a bully saying, hey, I'm going to go and get a gun and shoot up whatever, then maybe immediately report that to obviously law enforcement, parents and principals and whatnot. But maybe have a little bit tighter security prompted at the schools. Maybe that's something that Jeremy's putting out there as a suggestion. Regardless, David Meyer says again he's willing to have conversations about all of this.
there's a number of things that I'm willing to have conversations about and figure out. But I think that it's just something coming to this committee is perceived as anti-gun, and I've never filed an anti-gun piece of legislation in my life.
So David Meyer obviously has also filed, I believe, bills in the past to get rid of the FOID card. But this being the Gun Violence Prevention Committee, David Meyer being in the minority Republican Party, getting a bill heard, that's interesting. Hirschauer, again, the chair, Democrat from Batavia, saying that it's important to have these conversations.
Common sense gun violence prevention takes work and input from lawful gun owners as well. So thank you for bringing this bill forward so we can bring that message out, because that's really important to me as the committee chair.
And David Meyer went on to finish his conversation. I'm sorry, I just saw something in the live chat. Sometimes I shouldn't look at the live chat. Other times, I get feedback from you guys. Sorry. All right, live to tape. Get the live show here each and every weekday morning, and join the live chat as well. But David Meyer closing out. He says, "Listen. As you said earlier, this isn't a Second Amendment infringement idea. This is something he's willing to have conversations about, and it's not anti-gun or anything like that."
And once again, for anybody out there that's paying attention to this bill, I want to make sure they understand that I'm not sending law enforcement to their house because of a statement that was made. I want to make sure that we head it off with the proper communication. Whether law enforcement needs to be involved or does not need to be involved, we can make those decisions in the policy in the future.
So David Meyer bill, it was just subject matter. We could hear some different proposals to amend it, or different ideas about reporting this type of level of bullying, especially if there's a gun that's being threatened to be used. So here we are on the ground at the state capitol. I got to get out of here right now and go cover what's going on today, because they're in session. So be back tomorrow. We'll see what happens, right? It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, and get the newsletter in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. Again, thecentersquare.com. Thursday, got to get out of here. We got one last day of session today. They probably are going to be done by like 1 o'clock. We'll see what they do. We'll hear about revenue projections and how much of your tax dollars the state expects to get in the next fiscal year. And is the budget really going to be balanced that the governor proposed? So we'll hear about that. We'll also hear even more about the issues concerning tariffs or cell phones in schools. The governor has an event in Champaign, I believe, today, talking about his effort to get rid of cell phones in schools, and so much more. So be back here tomorrow with the Center Square, Illinois in Focus. Follow me anywhere, Bishop on Air. Just find that, X, Facebook, Instagram, and you can connect that way. But wake up with us each and every weekday morning in the live chat so you can join the live conversation. Maybe I'll see something in the corner of my eye here that'll spark something to share with you guys. All right, have a great morning. We'll see you back here tomorrow with Illinois in Focus Daily.